I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'll be chairing the meeting tonight. I'm your council member, Rick Ryan. And we'd like to start with attendance. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Here.
Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
Councilmember Page.
Present, attending remotely via teleconference.
Aaron Murray, I believe Councilmember Murray might be a little bit late, but Mayor Pro Tem asked to be excused.
Could I get a motion to excuse the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem?
I move or so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Passes. How many we got here? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll note Councilmember Murray when she arrives. Okay, moving right along. We'll look at and see if we have any general public comments.
No one signed up for in-person comments or remote comments, and paper or written comments were distributed to council.
Thank you, City Clerk. All right, let's move on to City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Councilmember. A couple things to mention tonight. First, we have received comments back from Snohomish County on the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, so we're working through those, and we'll have that plan ready to present to Council in hopefully about a month or so. We are sending out our newsletter, fall newsletter, unfortunately fall, but fall newsletter out midweek next week, so that'll go to every residential address in the city. And also happy to report that the new school zone flashers at 223rd and 44th have been installed and are operating. That was funded by a grant from Snohomish County with the help of Councilmember Mead. And I also want to say we concluded our city food drive this week, and we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. Very proud of all the work that folks did to bring food in. A couple of highlights, we donated 1,430 pounds of fresh produce. We donated nearly $3,800 in cash, $3,796. And we had 375 pounds of canned goods and 814 diapers and 70 packages of baby wipes, 120 pounds of rice, and 161.5 pounds of pasta. So very proud of that. We did, it was great, a little interdepartmental competition. It was a lot of fun. Lastly, just wanted to remind everybody that we are closed on Monday for Labor Day, and hope everybody has a great 3-day weekend. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, moving on. Presentation on rates by the Snohomish County Solid Waste Division with our Public Works Director, Gary Shimmick. Welcome. We'll go ahead and let you get ready.
All right, thank you, Council. Gary Shimmick, your Public Works Director. Very excited to be here tonight with one of our partners. Just a little brief intro before I hand it over to John Greninger, who's one of the operations managers with Snohomish County Solid Waste. A lot of partners in this work, right? So, of course, we do quite a bit on our end here at MLT with my staff and myself managing the contract. With Waste Management, who is our collection and hauler. We also do some of our education and outreach, but again, primarily we're working closely with Waste Management to make sure that they're doing their part in their contract, and they've been a really good partner. But then we have Snohomish County. That's where Waste Management takes their waste. So they're a big part in our chain, and of course, then where they export to. So it's a not just one team here. It's a big team. So I'll be able to answer any questions at the end related to our part in this. But really today, John's just going to explain a little bit about just what their services are, and they've had some recent rate changes that have been approved by County Council, and just going to walk you through that. And we'll be able to, and I just talked with Waste Management earlier today, and there's a slide that John talks about this, about what the impact to our curbside customers will be for some of these changes. So we'll be able to answer that. So without further ado, John, I'll give it over to you, and I will direct the slides.
Perfect, thank you. So a few of the things that I'd like to talk about today is just to give you a little bit of a tonnage review, kind of like what's happening in Snohomish County. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the rate implementation that was just passed, give you a little bit of some legislative updates, because there's lots going on at the state level, and a couple of projects that are specific to the Mountlake Terrace, the Southwest Transfer Station here, and then kind of some next steps and some kind of partnership ideas and just things. So this slide here this is pretty interesting. This shows the big red bold line that's up top. That shows our tonnage this year, and we're north of 8% higher year to date than we were last year. And last year was a record year. You can see that kind of that dip right in the middle, how that goes down each year. That is right before the 4th of July weekend, right? So I think people are getting ready and for the holiday, and we generate a lot of waste. And then you can see the spikes after the 4th of July. Now, those are extra spikes on there because that is when the Republic Services strike was resolved. And so we had double and triple loads coming into the facilities, which really, that's the peak that you see in red there. But overall, the last 4 weeks have been record weeks as far as tonnage since we've been using this spreadsheet here since 2008. So lots of material is coming in, and this is also kind of indicative of our household hazardous waste facility. They've seen a 12% increase in customers year to date. So all sorts of solid waste is really hopping. We're extremely busy. Next slide. Sure.
Thank you for being here, firstly. Just curious, because, I don't think we have that many more residents, and so it's hard to believe that we're just generating that much more waste. So it's hard to detach. You're not the recycling and yard waste folks, right? You're just straight trash, or it's like I always get a little confused on who's who.
So we offer a lot of services. We're not doing the yard waste now, right? That goes to the private composters throughout Snohomish County. But we do have various recycling at our facilities.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit more limited to like glass, cardboard, metal.
So I guess my question is that recycling mixed into this?
No,
That's separate, right?
no,
Yeah.
This is just straight up garbage.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So are you seeing a dip in the recycling as you're watching the waste go up? Like, is this not an education thing? I was hoping it was something simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and there's lots of reasons why we're seeing more. It's a little bit perplexing because building permits aren't up so much, but there is a new line coming to Boeing, and Boeing's a big customer, right? There's a lot of King County material coming up because our rates are lower, which is a great segue to the next slide. So with our rates, just a little bit of background, we've increased rates twice in the last 33 years, right? And in 92, and most recently in 2009, when it became 105 a ton. We were able to do that primarily through the sale of real estate. And so the sale of kind of the proceeds from the real estate sales have been used to help subsidize the solid waste program. And that kept rates really pretty low. And when you look at the CPI increase from 2009, it's increased 45.3%, yet our rates have stayed the same. And it's just getting to a point where it's not manageable, right? We did increase some rates in 2024, and that was for what we call our residual reclamation waste program, some illegal dumping fees, our Vector program, and the Has Waste fees. But yeah, so that's just a little bit of background. Next slide.
Councilmember Page, did you have your hand up before?
I did, but I think he answered my question. When I first saw this slide a few days ago, I was just wondering how rates are kept low through the sale of real estate. But I'm guessing what you're referring to is you sold real estate that you owned, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all solid waste fund property, and then those proceeds went into our fund balance that we used. So this is a map. This is as of February of 25 this year. And I just wanted to point out, so Snohomish County here is 105 a ton. The other one I wanted to point out is Thurston County down south is 119. And I have an updated map coming here in just a second, but it just gives you perspective of our rates as this is what it is currently right now. Basically in the state, 90% of the state had higher tipping fees than we do. And again, it just isn't sustainable with all the other programs. So next slide. So what we did was, beginning in 2024, we started this process of a rate analysis and cost of service evaluation. And so we started early 24, and this was totally comprehensive, where we looked at all of our transactional data, kind of our staffing, our personnel costs, salaries, overtime, equipment costs, rental costs, any sort of tonnage forecasts we have, and in various budgets. And so we gave all of this to the consultant, and they created this analysis tool. It's this Excel worksheet with like 20 tabs on it. It's pretty crazy. And we use that to kind of figure out where rates should be. There's three things that we're really interested in maintaining. And that was maintaining the level of service. That was maintaining our 120-day required fund balance, because we need that in there to pay the bills, right? And also being able to cover the actual operational costs by 2029, right? And so those three things were the primary drivers of what we were looking at in this tool to kind of figure it out, right? And so as a result, what we did was we created separate fee schedules. Like existing right now, there's one fee schedule for all the solid waste rates. And so what we did was we separated our fees into fees. So right now, beginning in January 1, there'll be two fee schedules. One will be just for the waste export fees. That's what we export on the rail. And then the other fee schedule is just for other fees, like there's a green waste fee and all the household hazardous waste fees, like when businesses come to dispose of material, those are in there. So waste export fees and other program fees. So that's a brand new thing. We never had more than one fee schedule. And so as a result, we had a motion and an ordinance passed in June. The numbers, if you ever refer to those, they're tricky because they're the same numbers, just transposed, right? So motion 25-207, that's the regular programmatic service fee schedule, and ordinance 25-027 is the waste export contract. And the ordinance piece, there's code later that you can click on. It's the new fees start and they're listed in code. So that was the ordinance. So anyway, that's kind of how we got here. Yeah, next slide, please.
Yeah, and just for the record, I'd like to note that Councilmember Murray joined at 7:12.
So the impacts here, and this was kind of the big thing that I wanted to talk to you about. So for your residents, is with the approval of the rates by council, that allows us to maintain our current service levels, which is great. It allows us to maintain an appropriate fund balance going forward. What it will do is it increases the minimum load fee. So right now, if you go to Southwest, 360 pounds, it's $20. So what that means is that 360 pounds will now be $30 beginning January 1. So that's a big, because we have a lot of minimum loads, so it's going for $20 to $30. The main tipping fee structure, and this is a big change too, in that right now we have one fee for whether you're self-haul and you bring it to the transfer station yourself, or if Waste Management brings it to us via, they collect curbside and they bring it to us. It's all 105 a ton now. What it's changing to is the self-haul will be 160 a ton, and the curbside, because they do more volume and it's a different type of garbage, it's really nice and contained and soft and squishy, and it's easy to process. And so because of that, we can have a little bit lower fee, right? And so that curbside fee will be $149 per ton. And then all of our analysis, we estimate that will make a $3 to $4 per month change to like your residents' curbside fees.
Looking at your interactive map, when you say curbside, is that something that's offered in the city outside of our contracts? So that's what the average impact of curbside customers is approximately $3 to $4 per month.
So when I say that, that's a general analysis that we did across the county, because there's curbside service and unincorporated as well. And so this kind of all encompassing, but it does, that's our estimate of what we think that WM is going to, what kind of impact it'll have in Mountlake Terrace.
What kind of curbside fees do you charge monthly for? I'm trying to look at your interactive map.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. So we don't charge curbside fees.
Okay.
All the curbside haulers, there's 5 haulers in the county. All those haulers take it to a transfer station, and then they are charged fees when they enter the station.
Okay. When I saw that, I'm thinking, oh, can we get a better deal? Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining.
But that's a great map that you're on, by the way. There's lots of good resources in there.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to add, I had a conversation today with our friends at Waste Management about this slide. And they concurred that this is a good ballpark number, $3 to $4, but they just wanted me to let you know that's not in stone. They'll be telling us quite shortly what it will be, and that also doesn't take into account the CPI, the inflation factors. So in 2026, there'll be the CPI, which is inflation, and then on top of that, about $3 to $4 per month for each customer.
So what you're telling me there is, sorry, I didn't make the connection, is what our residents in our city could be seeing.
Yes.
So at least $4 and then plus inflation.
Correct.
Thank you for
And Waste
making that
Management,
gap for me.
through their, they gave me a really nice detailed spreadsheet today, estimate from 50 cents to $4, depending on where you're at. So they're just, they'll just heads up. And they'll come back at the end of this year to talk about those changes as well too. But this slide has been approved by Waste Management. Councilmember Page.
Thank you. Just for understanding, the tipping fee for self-haul at transfer stations is going to increase from 105 to 160 per ton. So I've got neighbors who bring their stuff, to the station, and they never use the haulers. And I'm guessing that the people that pick up curbside, those are your G certified haulers.
Correct.
But
yes.
So I'm trying to understand how this fee works. Is it $160 up to a ton, and then after a ton, it's something else? I mean, like, how are my neighbors going to look at this line and understand it?
When they pull up to the transfer station and they go across the scales, they're going to be weighed. They're going to be weighed in, and then they'll dump their load, and then they'll be weighed out, and then so the tonnage that they disposed of, that is prorated at $160 per ton. So if it was 2 tons, their bill would be $320.
Okay. If it was less than a ton, then it's a percentage of that.
Correct.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Yep.
John, could you just add, what is that, the minimum, the load for $30, what tonnage is that?
That's 360 pounds.
360 pounds, okay.
Yeah.
So anything up to 360 pounds, $30.
Yep.
Then above 360 pounds, it's prorated based on 160 per ton.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. Thank you all. Apologies for coming in late, but I had a chance to look over at the materials. And I guess I did have, I think, 2 questions, maybe one for you and one for Gary. So we have a current contract with Waste Management that's a 10-year contract. So I guess, I haven't had a chance to pull up the contract specifically. So I guess, can you speak to, we don't have kind of a fixed progression in rates with Waste Management as part of that 10-year contract? I guess I thought we did, but I didn't have a chance to go back and take a look at that. So I guess, could you speak to how this impacts those numbers that we've already agreed to?
That is a great question. Yes, there is kind of a set fee that we agreed to with them, but then there's a couple, I'll just say two general things that are outside of that or embedded within there. One is the CPI, the annual inflation factors, which we agreed upon, and that's in the contract too. The second are perturbances to the rates, such as this, where something is out of their control. That could be this. It could be, if you remember back years ago, not that long ago, but COVID era, when China stopped accepting some of our products, there was a big increase in price there. So those are kind of extraordinary measures. I think that's the 2 categories: CPI and then things out of their control.
Interesting. And they take our waste to Snohomish County versus King County, even though they're based in King County?
Correct. Yeah, it's, and that's a whole nother meeting. Yeah.
Nice.
I just want to make sure that these cost increases are being passed on because they are really cost increases versus.
Yeah, the garbage generated in Snohomish County
Yeah.
is processed and managed in Snohomish County,
Okay.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
even though they're based elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. That's
Yes.
super helpful. And then my other question was kind of around that. I know King County transfer stations have created rules around only, you have to live in King County to be able to access their services. We don't have those currently, correct? Is that something that, I guess I saw the difference in cost, and I would imagine that we are taking a lot of folks from King
And I
County.
think that did contribute a bit to our tonnage.
Okay.
But we've done analysis on that, and it's not too bad. It's not too much to where it's really impacting our services.
Okay.
But that is a slight factor. Yeah.
Not enough to impact
Yeah,
the costs
it's
that are
in
so
code,
much.
but we've looked at enforcing that, and we've done analysis on because we'd have to implement that for all of our facilities.
Okay.
And so like for example, up north, like say Island County coming to Snohomish County is 1% or something like that. So we'd have to ask everybody for their ID. And so it's just kind of a balance, and that is on our radar, and we are evaluating that, but we have not implemented it like King County has.
Got it. Got it. Well, thank you. I appreciated the presentation,
Yeah.
and I appreciated the presentation. Maybe not the information, but the presentation. Thank you.
The next slide has a little
And I
bit.
wanted to add one more thing that Jeff and I were just talking about. John, you mentioned earlier about council approval of the rates, and that was county council approval, just so you know that you did not approve that. So just making sure that we're all on the same page here, and our audience knows that as well, too. So that was the county council, Snohomish County Council approval of those two, an ordinance and a motion, I believe it shows.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff.
The next slide has a little bit more information that for what you were asking. Well, not this one. So this shows the new rates, just to give it a little bit more perspective across the state. And so as of January 1, 26, we will be 160 a ton self-haul, 149 a ton for the haulers. And coincidentally, Thurston County just approved a rate increase as well. They're going to 136 a ton, and then they are increasing in January 1 of 27, it's going up to 154. That was kind of their model that they did. Next slide. And so what we did to ensure that we don't have these rate issues going forward, because once every 16 years is not a good practice. So what we did was, and this is what you can see in code, and there's a link there, beginning January 1 of 27, there'll be a 3% fee increase each year, each January 1. So it's consistent, it's predictable for your hauler partners. And so those rates will go up 3% each year beginning in 27.
Is that in addition to the $3 to $4 plus the inflation fee too? So this
Yes,
is-
so
there's
when
three-
when I'm looking at these fees, this is the 160 a ton and the 149 a ton for the haulers. I would imagine a similar impact for your WM doing your curbside collection. And so what it really is going to happen, so just to back up, and I'll get right back to that. On June 23rd, we sent a letter, a hauler notification letter, saying, hey, county council, approve these rates. Haulers, work with the UTC and figure out what the new rates are. And so they're doing that process, and then that's where they're going to meet with their contract cities, like all of you, and you guys will figure out the rates based upon the rates that we told them are coming. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. And so that 3% fee increase, that is for the self-haul and the certificated haulers. And then each September-ish, there'll be communication between the haulers and the UTC, and then subsequently you as a city for your rates. And so there will be, I would imagine, about a 3% each year. But that part won't really be known yet.
This is a curiosity question. So you service all of the different contractors in Snohomish County. So this would probably, I'm looking for ways to negotiate. And so this is going out to all of the people that pick up waste in Edmonds. I'm trying to remember all their different names. Like we have Waste Management and all of them. So
Yep.
it's going to go up.
Yep. So
consistently.
Sound Disposal, Rubatino Refuse, Republic Services, Waste Management, and the City of Marysville are all the haulers in Snohomish County. So they will take these rates, work with the UTC, and work, because not everybody has a contract like you all do, but they'll work with their their groups and figure out what the rates will be.
Thank you.
Yep. And so that just kind of summarizes the first few bullet points. The other part of the ordinance that was changed is for unsecured loads. There's RCW out there where loads have to be strapped down. Right now, our unsecured load fee is $5, and it's $10 for like trucks over 8,000 pounds. Yes. Yeah. It's the same as the police, that it can be enforced by them, and we can assess a fee for unsecured loads. Yeah, so they could be, I suppose, pulled over on the way to us and then get another fee when they get to us.
But you can assess that they're unsecured once they drive onto your property.
Correct. That's yeah, yes. And so that fee is going from $5 to $20.
Or just like one car?
Yep. 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 And so that will be effective January 1 as well. Yeah. Next slide. So that was all of my rate questions. I wanted to hop in quickly on just give you a quick legislative review, because there's a whole bunch going on at the state level. There's over 1,900 bills that were introduced this last session in 2025. And since it's a biennial budget, that means it's like a biennial session. And so those bills that didn't pass have another chance in 26, right? And so possibly solid waste specific coming back is solid waste collection tax, a bottle bill, electric vehicle battery, EPR, and EPR is extended producer responsibility. So possibly EV batteries, textiles, mattresses. Now the ones that did pass, and this is the tricky part, all of these things passed, we know they're going to impact us somehow, but they're going through this rulemaking process that typically takes 2 years each. And so we don't know what the impact's going to be, but we know it will impact us, right? And that is the Recycling Reform Act, Organics Management Law, batteries. There's a thing on solid waste facility enforcement, enhanced litter fines, right to repair for electronics, and PFAS and biosolids. That's a whole bunch there. They're doing the rulemaking on those right now, and it will impact us. We just don't know how yet. Next slide. Then just some updates for you, since we have the Southwest Transfer Station just kind of across the road. We are going to be looking at doing scale replacements there, and we're going to replace the roof on the scale house. That will happen probably April-ish of next year, but that will impact service. I anticipate, it'll impact service there, longer lines. And then just so you know, we are on this, we have a waste export contract, right, with Republic Services. It was a 10-year agreement with potential extensions. We couldn't come to agreements on those extensions. And so we issued an RFP early August. That's out on the street right now. And I believe it's early October. Those are all due, and we'll see what comes back on that. And just some kind of next steps on how we can all collaborate. We have our Solid Waste Advisory Committee. I think Patrick said that he was attending all those. We're going to get you guys the official, because it's an official board and commission through the county. And so we'll get you all that paperwork so you can vote and contribute. And anyway, SWAC's a great forum for cities to ask questions, comment, participate in solid waste speak. Some education and outreach areas where I think we can partner coming up is on the new fee implementation. We're going to be doing lots of education and outreach on that. Unsecured loads, like I had mentioned, we're going to have lots of handouts, and so you could pass the words on to your residents. Batteries are a huge thing right now. Not to get too derailed, but we've had a lot of facility fires and this year, and they're all kind of like lithium-ion batteries, embedded batteries. It's a thing, and we could all use your help in getting the word out there on battery issues. And then legislative support. You saw a whole bunch of things that are happening at the state, and if you have any questions about that, get a hold of Gary, and we'll talk about it. We can, yeah, there's just a lot going on at the state, and if you have input or perspective, just let me know. So that's kind of all I had. If there's any more questions.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, looking at all the
Some more?
legislative issues, it just has a lot of dollar signs. And so garbage used to be something, you know, that was halfway affordable, and we've had to negotiate with waste management and get really tough on that before. But this kind of, you know, I was talking about it last night. We were always told years ago that growth would pay for itself. But one of the first things that you stated is there's so much coming in. Because there's so much growth here, we're producing more garbage, and other countries aren't taking our garbage, and they don't want our used clothes. And then we've got the battery, and we did have a fire down there. I'm not sure if it was from batteries, but it's just a lot for people to absorb the cost. And so with that being said, though, so it's going to be about educating, you know, our citizens about why all the cost, you know, and it's a lot to deal with, but one benefit is having a transfer station in Mountlake Terrace. It's very beneficial to our citizens. We don't have to drive that far. Years ago, we had the person up above, I believe they've moved now, with tons of issues with the smell, and I have not heard any complaints about that since. And every time I go there, the people that work there are extremely nice, and that's very good for our citizens to have a good experience, because I know I don't like going there because you're afraid you're going to, you know, drive on nails or something, but they're always sweeping, they're always wetting it down. So I just, good feedback anyhow, that I feel like you're giving our citizens in Snohomish County a good service. The other thing that I noticed is junk vehicles, and I think it's like $105 per pound, or an abandoned vehicle, a boat, or an RV. It's something that we never think about, but
Yep.
you guys also take care of that.
Yeah,
as
we have a
well.
pretty cool abandoned vehicle RV program, vessels, and property owners can bring, we can process those and recycle the parts that we can, dispose of what we can't, and they pay the tonnage fee. So right now it's $105 a ton. And we have on our website, there's our environmental cleanup program. There's a whole bunch of information on how to schedule appointments, and it's a pretty cool program because not a lot of people do that. And we have a lot of other counties come in and model after us.
So if our police officers find an abandoned vehicle, our city would pay that amount? I don't want it out there.
No,
I'm
well,
just-
I would say it depends, because when we get law enforcement involved, there's a lot more nuances with that. Because where we process them, you know, the sheriff's office has a building there as well, and it becomes an issue of storage. So we're primarily focused on the abandoned vehicles, but it's complicated.
There's more to it.
There
There
is a lot, but yeah, we do look at those.
And then just two more things, Gary. Our waste management, every household is required to have waste management. They can't just wrap it up and bring it to our transfer station, the way I understood our contract.
No, I will look at that, but I don't believe that is true. I think when I worked for Carolyn and I worked for Redmond. That was a city that, yes, you were required to. I don't believe it's mandatory, but I
Maybe
will.
it changed then in our contract, because I remember we'd have people come in here and say, I don't have any garbage, you know, I compost, I do everything, I use to recycle, and all I have is like, I was always so impressed, a little bag, and I do not want to pay for garbage, so yeah, we
Yeah,
could.
I'll look that up. I'm pretty sure
Because,
we
you
don't
know,
have
it's
to.
not really an option. And then just the one last thing I'm just really curious about is when you sold real estate, since you're a governmental entity, isn't, I'm sorry, I'll just say, it sounds like public gifting of funds. I mean, how are you to use real estate to offset? Is it, maybe it was to not give it to the customers, but it was more of your facilities and how you made
It was
improvement?
operational
Oh, okay,
costs.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, I
Yeah, no,
thought maybe I
you're-
heard it wrong. I was like, wait a
Yeah,
minute.
or maybe I didn't explain that.
Oh, no,
but
no,
It
it's
was, it was operational costs. Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, but thank you.
yeah, for sure.
Appreciate you answering all the questions.
Council Woodard?
Thank you, sir. And it's Dave, correct?
John,
John?
yeah.
Okay, see, I was
Dave-
50/50.
Dave's the director.
Well, it would make sense when I say this next statement, which is, very nice job, John. I came in to be very angry, which is why I didn't remember your name. So they sent the right person, because you've definitely presented this in a very reasonable way that I can't figure out why I'm mad, because it doesn't seem like it was in your control either, but I want it to be in somebody's control. So that's what I'm looking for, a gotcha question here, so feel free to pass it along as not. I am impressed with the presentation, but I feel like that waste export contract coming up is a giant monster sitting in the corner, meaning that everything we just heard could absolutely just unravel if those RFPs in August do not come back the way we would, apparently you would hope, because you said you couldn't reach an agreement on the extensions.
Right.
And I'm just, maybe conflating things here, but that's
No,
starting to me to sound like the or the public defender's contract, where I'm like, okay, are you guys in the driver's seat? You can just tell us whatever you want to pay, and then we got to just adjust to that, so.
No, that's a great question, and there's definitely a concern of ours. And it's because it's hard, right? Like, how do you try and anticipate what the rates are going to be? But we did quite a bit of research. We feel comfortable with our estimates, and we plug those into our rate model. And I think we used our best estimates to accommodate for that. Worst case, let's say if the rates that come back, the bids that come back are crazy higher than our estimates, then we would probably have to go to council and figure something out. But we've already tried to accommodate for that. And so I feel pretty good where we're at.
Well, again, you're the perfect person, man. I'm going to sleep well, trusting your voice right now and what you're saying. Teasing a little bit, but I sincerely hope that September doesn't bring some nasty news to us.
Yep.
Because it feels a little precarious.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. And again, thank you. And just a couple other quick questions, I think quick questions. Is yard waste ever coming back as not a trash option, but as like I think we used to be able to take yard waste to the transfer station in a way where it was like somehow processed for like compost or something where it would come back versus end up in a landfill. Is that ever coming back at the transfer station?
I don't anticipate yard, because it's morphing with the organics management law.
Okay.
And you'll see changes coming through our comp plan next time we do an update, because we used to break it out like yard waste and clean wood.
Okay.
Now it's going to be more organics, right? Because it's, there's a, well, it was passed 6 years ago, I think,
Okay.
an effort with the organics management law to keep organics out of the landfill,
Right.
right? And so we don't have the capacity at our facilities. Like right now, like literally right now, we have 13 containers worth of garbage on the floor, just right down the street. So But in Snohomish County, we're really fortunate to have, we have 5 compost facilities, like vendors throughout the county, and like, I think like something like 13 outlets. There's a list on our website. So there's lots of outlets. The problem with Mountlake Terrace is that it was super convenient for residents, right? It was just right up the street. And yeah, I don't anticipate it coming back, especially with the way the legislative, the way it's trending right now.
Thank you, super helpful. And you said there's a list on your website if people were looking for those
sure.
resources, though?
Yep.
Awesome. And then just the other question was about that April closure you mentioned, or the April work that you mentioned. Do you anticipate there being a full closure at any point? Okay.
No, we're going to try and keep the facility open. It's just going to be slower going through the scales when one lane, there's 4 of the lanes, right? And as one gets shut down, and it's just going to get clogged up.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any. So thank you very much for coming and giving us this news.
Yeah.
Personally, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Because I kept hearing, oh no, it's coming. Where are we putting our garbage? Oh my. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, we worked hard to keep rates low, keep the full spectrum of services, and try and just be good stewards of the process and the dollars. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'll come back anytime if you ever have any questions. You can always go through Gary, and we'll get them answered.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, we're going to have a presentation on the first and the second quarter police report with Police Chief Kaw and Commanders, just King, not Haynes. So Haynes not here. Okay.
Good evening, Council, and special thanks to you for bringing back a memory of Jerry Smith and saying "moving right along" one more time. So, long history of that. For those in the audience, Pete Kaw, the police chief, I have sitting next to me Scott King, the commander in charge of investigations and support services. Commander Haynes is currently camping on vacation. He'll be back to work next week, and he'll join us for the next report. This first and second quarter report restates the goals and gives an update on how goals are being reached. The report presentation includes first and second quarter statistical data such as calls for service, traffic stops, arrests, DUIs, in comparisons to 2024 statistical data. There's a lot of data here. There's no video. So I'll move right along myself and get into it here. Any technical issues are the commander's fault, not mine. This first slide is our brand. You'll see it every time. It's just the Obama stuff from a couple of years ago. It's still something we live by. Next slide. I will not go through Rickover's rules again. Maybe next time I'll tantalize you with 12 more rules, but that's part of our brand as well. 2 men I admire very much. On to some goals and goals philosophy. One of our goals is to provide a safe community for everyone. We like to utilize our resources effectively. A couple examples are the extensive use of the unmanned vehicle program, otherwise known as drones, and traffic DUI enforcement and force multiplier by belonging to task forces such as the Violent Offenders Task Force. We focus on community-oriented policing and outreach. We utilize the embedded social worker program. I've talked to you about that numerous times. We're very happy with the way that program is been carried out. Cops and Clergy, another very popular program led by Sergeant Matt Porter. The e-bikes we bought last year. Now the weather's nice. We've been seeing them out in the community a bit. You'll see more of that. Work collaboratively with regional intelligence groups. Again, an example is the U.S. Marshal Service Violent Offender Task Force. Participation in regional intelligence groups, otherwise known as the RIG. We incorporate education and long-term strategies for enforcement, work with other city departments to maintain a clean and inviting atmosphere. We recruit and maintain quality personnel. We have one candidate from a King County agency finishing her background presently, and I'm meeting with another young man next week to possibly make a conditional offer and start a background there. If we get those two people hired, that'll bring us up to our authorized strength. We were at full strength for a while, but people do move around in this business, so there you are. Well, I like to provide challenging environments for personnel. I like to push people into areas they're not comfortable in, focus on succession planning. That's why you see the two commanders with me a lot in these meetings. Maintain auditing systems, like such Lexipol, Spider Tech. And the nice thing about Spider Tech, people are sent a text or an email from Snow 911 asking how they liked their service. Now, 30 years ago, we'd have thought twice about maybe asking someone how they liked their service because not everyone in meet is happy to see us. It's sometimes the worst day of their life, but we get surprisingly positive data back from them, and it's been very, very enlightening. Some more goals. We want to be regional leaders, set the example for modern policing. We want to listen to community feedback, like the program I just talked about. Update and modify policy promptly. We belong with Lexipol. They update policies consistently when things change, case law change, best practice changes. We develop and promptly instruct internal training tools. Every time an officer signs on, they get once a week, they get a Lexipol quiz to deal with policy. You have to answer 3 or 4 questions. They have to get it right. We like to be transparent as possible, and we like to be proactive in incorporating improvements and efficiencies in lieu of a wait and see approach. Just be responsive to the community. And of course, we like to practice fiscal responsibility. Now on to the numbers and some of the statistical data. I'll turn it over to Commander King.
All right, good evening, Council. So I'll start with some of the statistics. So calls for service were up first and second quarter. Community-oriented policing calls were down, likely because of our calls being up. It's less time for the officers to be out contacting the community. And reports were pretty consistent with 2024. Traffic stops were up first and second quarter, and this is likely due to the addition of our traffic officer. Been out there hitting it hard. Traffic infractions were also up both quarters, probably for the same reason. Citations were down both quarters. This is in part to us not issuing citations for driving while suspended third degree anymore, and we did that in an effort to try to keep our court costs down. And if you look at the second quarter, 2025, that number's down quite a bit, which will bring down our public defender cost as well. So we're trying to be mindful of that. DUI arrests were up first quarter 2025 and up by 1 the second quarter. Vehicle prowls were down first quarter and slightly up second quarter. Burglaries were also down first quarter and up second quarter. Arrests were up first quarter and second quarter from 2024. There was a decrease in DV crimes first quarter of approximately about 9% over the same period last year. Second quarter, there was a decrease of approximately 20%. After a dramatic steady increase in DV crimes starting in September of 2023, this decrease hopefully indicates a potential trend towards more satisfactory numbers. So very positive as far as that's trending right now, and we hope it stays that way. There was also, oh, sorry.
Yeah, could we get a question in?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Page, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do have a series of questions, but the first question I have for right now anyway is, can you give me an example of an infraction
So an infraction would be speeding or running a stop sign or anything that's not a criminal offense. So driving while license is suspended third degree is a criminal offense. So you would, there's possible jail time associated with that. Infractions don't have jail time.
So didn't the state just pass something that stated that, like in residential areas, for instance, if you're going more than 10 miles an hour, that they were going to change how those are viewed if, so you're going 35 miles an hour and, a 20 mile an hour on 66 or something. Didn't that change a little bit?
So it
no?
could be, depending on the situation, it could be considered reckless driving, which would be a criminal citation. That's probably what you're talking about.
Okay.
There would be some discretion there based on circumstances, whether we did an infraction or a criminal citation.
All right, thank you. I guess I do have other questions, but I'm going to wait to some other slides before we get there.
Just for a little clarification about infractions, those are civil penalties, something you just write a check on. Where we're saving money is in the case of the suspended in the third degree, we can write an infraction. It's called a no valid operator's license, which is an infraction. Just pay a fine, or if they don't pay a fine, it goes to collection. We're not having to pay for our prosecutor and the defense attorney, the public defender to take the case to trial. Same mode of punishment, but a much more economically efficient way to deal with the issue.
Thank you.
Back to the numbers here. Arrests were up first and second quarter of 2024. Oh, I already said that one. Sorry. I'll move on to the next thing. So violent crimes were up both first and second quarter from 2024. This is a graph of our demographics for Mountlake Terrace. These graphs show infractions by race for first and second quarter of 2025. And these graphs show arrests by race for first and second quarter of 2025.
Okay, this is where I have some questions, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. All right, and I'm going to try to do this at a high level, but if we can go back to that slides 31 and 32, the infractions by race and the arrests by race, we look at the demographics, of the city, and my numbers say 62, your numbers say 58% white, but I look at the total number, first of all, of infractions for the 2 quarters, 631, one group, and let me stop that by first saying that, the numbers I think are great numbers, but I think that what they don't do is they don't illustrate how each of the various groups, that you're comparing are interrelated with one another in terms of what's actually happening. And I think a percentage of what the slides are telling us gives a better picture of what is actually happening here, in my opinion. For instance, the total number of infractions between the first and second quarter, one group was 71% that actually had the highest percentage of people in the city. The next group that had 3% of the infractions, represented, maybe like about 10, 11% of the population. The next group that represented 9% of those total infractions represented 3.6% of the population. And then the last group that you show on here represented 15% of the infractions, and they represented 14% of the total. And then if we go to the next slide, the actual arrest, and I'm gonna do a high level, so I'm gonna combine them. When I look at the infractions and the arrest, we had one group that out of the 450, infractions, they had 312 arrests, and they represented 69% of the total difference of infractions versus arrests. So, and they represent 58 to 62% of the population. So they kind of like in the ballpark part. We had the next group that, looking at those same numbers, the infractions versus arrests was 64% of the total of the differential. And again, they represented 10% of the population. The group that represented the smallest percent of the population represented 92% of the arrests that occurred between infractions and arrest. And then the group that had, the second highest number of infractions, represented only 3% or 15%, I'm sorry, of that infraction versus arrest. So much so that group that only represented 15% they were 144% more at a better rate than the group that had the lowest percentage of people represented in the city, but they had the highest percentage of incidents versus arrest, and they had 256% of a better deal than the group that represents 10% of the force. So the question I have regarding these numbers, because it jumps out at me as when I look at the percentage versus the numbers, is that one, when you all looked at these reports, do you also look at the percentages of what these reports are telling you so that you can get the big picture?
A couple of things. We have to be very careful in what assumptions we accept. Those demographics reflect only the city of Mountlake Terrace. If we're assuming that we're only arresting and giving tickets to people who live in the city, that's not a correct assumption. We live in metropolitan Seattle, so a good high percentage of the people we give tickets to, arrests, or take any action are not residents of the city. So the demographics, it's very hard to draw conclusions from demographics in terms of numbers. And also, when you have low numbers that reflect high percentages, I'm not sure that's an accurate way to look at things. So two things. Number one, those demographics are only the city of Mountlake Terrace, whereas a vast majority of the people we deal with are not from the city. So you can't really extrapolate those numbers onto the other numbers. It's the danger of doing the math the way we're doing it. I don't know a different way to do it and a way to make it more accurate, but those are the two things that we need to fight against making those assumptions.
Well, I'm trying not to make any assumptions. I'm just kind of looking at the numbers. My second question was, are we keeping track? And I'm imagining that we are, the percentage of these instances, infractions, and arrests. If, what percentage of those are Mountlake Terrace residents or people passing through Mountlake Terrace, since it's our people that are arresting them. So I'm trying not to make any assumptions, but I think that, percentages, looking at these numbers, unless I got a calculator sitting in front of me, doesn't tell me what percentage is being, since we are looking at it by race, what does that percentage mean? When I look, so having said that, my other question is, did the number of arrests by race in the first and second quarter, did that in the difference in terms of what the percentage of the people that live in the city, 3.6%, 92% arrest rate, did anybody in over in the police plaza look at that and see anything wrong with that number?
The simple answer to that is no.
Okay.
We don't keep track of, we're analyzing people within the city and demographics. We're not including in that, and this is the problem with this type of analysis, we're not including that larger number of people that may come from Seattle or Spokane or wherever. And when we have numbers of that nature that are so low, one incident can create the situation that you're showing me. An incident where we arrest 3 or 4 people can completely skew those numbers and make it look like something that's not. So if that answers your question, we don't analyze addresses from outside of the city in terms of this demographic criteria. And again, the problem with presenting numbers that are so small, if we have the number of 4 and all of a sudden it becomes the number 8, that's a 100% increase. But is that really indicative of a problem or indicative of 4 becoming 8? If we have the number 400 one month and 800 the next, obviously that is something to worry about. But again, the numbers are small, which makes the appendage, a lot of the percentages appear large.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Just two other things I want to kind of point out, and you know, all in my experience, all across the country, regardless of how these numbers come by, this is exactly what these numbers look like in cities and in small towns, for stops, citations, arrests, and incarcerations. It's just what these numbers look like, whether there's a very strong big number or if it's a small number. And less than a year ago in our community, question went out to the community. I didn't ask the question, but I got hold of it because I was in the DEI commission. The question went out, and the question basically asked the community, did they feel that, here in MLT, was there a problem with profiling, bias profiling regarding stops, pullovers, citations given, arrests, incarcerations? And the people that responded, there was a huge response. And they weren't just people of color, they were multiracial, they were, Latino, they were people that identified themselves as maybe being in a relationship. And nobody had numbers. No one, I'm sure there was a lot of exaggeration. People spoke of their lived experience. But, when I saw these numbers and I remembered what happened a little bit less than a year ago, what those people said looked exactly like this report that I'm bringing up. And that's what brings concern to me. One, that nobody felt that, well, this looks a little weird, where we've got 92% of our arrests is happening to 3% of the population. And no one thought to say, well, are we doing anything different? Or should we be looking at things a little bit differently to make sure we're not heading in a direction that we shouldn't be heading in? So, with that, I only got two asks for you to consider. One, whether you show it up here on the board or you look at it in-house, but consider percentages when you put some of this stuff together, when you're comparing, especially race, because that percentage, whether it's a good percentage or a confusing percentage, it does jump out at you if anybody takes the time to look at it. And then, I encourage you, to just go back and ask yourselves the question, where you got 55 arrests for a 3.6% group, and you had another group that represented 80-something infractions, but they only wound up with 3% of the arrests. What's different here? The numbers just don't look that great from my seat. Okay.
I'd certainly be open to a different way of presenting this if that'll help, but that's something we can talk about at a later date. I'm totally cognizant of what you're pointing out, but I just don't know a different way to present that when the number is that small, but we can certainly talk about it. I'm open to suggestions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions? All right. No. No, we're moving on.
All right. So under records and animal control. So a records unit continues to receive training from a variety of sources, including the Washington State Law Enforcement Information and Records Association and the Washington Association of Public Record Officers. First quarter, our records personnel processed 646 cases, 53 collisions, and 308 public disclosure requests. Second quarter, they processed 604 cases, 44 collisions, and 172 public disclosure requests. First quarter, animal control processed 7 cases, 1 potentially dangerous dog, and second quarter, animal control processed 7 cases and 0 potentially dangerous dogs. For community outreach, Cops and Clergy was in support of the Snohomish County Health District's effort to address the opioid use disorder, training information on opioid use and overdose prevention was presented. This included training on when and how to use Narcan. Multiple boxes of Narcan were distributed to the community members and the clergy. In April, the Police Association and one of our officers donated a table to the Support 7 fundraiser. Additionally, Sergeant Porter was the MC for the event. On the right, you can see a picture of Officer Freuslin and Danielle Singsung, and they participated in April Pools Day. For training, the police department hosted a co-responder readiness class. Co-responder readiness facilitates the partnership between law enforcement and clinical mental health professionals. We also hosted a forensic evidence collection seminar which certified 2 of our officers as crime scene technicians. Detective Nguyen received his lead use of force instructor certification. Officer Ratliff attended drug recognition expert training and is now a certified DRE. Officer Zonic completed defensive tactics instructor training and is now our newest DT instructor. And Officers Wigan and Russell completed their initial pilot training for our Unmanned Aircraft System program and are now licensed UAS pilots. Blue Bridge Alliance. Officers continue to use the Blue Bridge program. On the left is a photo of Officer Freuslin buying a new coat for someone in our community. In the middle is a photo of officers assisting a stranded motorist who ran out of gas and did not have the funds to put gas in their vehicle. On the right is a photo of a couple experiencing homelessness and their battery had gone bad to their vehicle. We were able to buy them a new battery for the vehicle so they could get around. On September 10th, we will be discussing the Blue Bridge program at Terrace Talk. Property room. Evidence technician Custer processed 282 pieces of evidence first quarter and 295 pieces the second quarter. She destroyed 242 items first quarter and 531 items the second quarter. Any questions?
Councilmember Sonmore?
I just have just a couple questions, or one's just a comment, but thank you for being here. I just wanted to get a nod and maybe some more information. I saw one of our officers recently received an award for a life saving. Can you just talk a little bit about that? That's
Sure. So that we had someone in crisis at one of our bridges, and they were wanting to take their life, and so a couple of the officers were there trying to talk this person down, and this particular officer, Officer Voller, took the opportunity when this person was distracted and he realized they weren't really getting anywhere with their de-escalation techniques, and he grabbed hold of this person and pulled them away from the bridge, risking his own life, but he was able to save this person's life, and it was a pretty heroic situation, so he was awarded for that.
You guys always, have to deal with stuff that normal people don't have to deal with. So and we've had a death on that bridge before, not too long ago. So thank you for saying that. I'm not asking for it now, but maybe in the future, can you bring back about how the police department handles when somebody makes a report seeing possibly stolen items on an online site, how you deal with that? I don't know the protocols, so I'm wondering, I don't want to put you on the spot or right during this meeting, but maybe bring that information back to us about how that's handled.
We can absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan, and thank you both for being here and for the work as always. A couple of questions. Well, I guess comment first. Yay for our traffic officer. I continue to appreciate the additional focus there, and I would put in a plug with school starting next week on Wednesday for any efforts we can take to ensure that people are making good choices as more kids are out there on the roads, especially early. We're making the transition to high school in my household, and got my daughter's bus schedule yesterday, and she has to get on the bus at 6:30 in the morning, which feels very painful. So anyway, I don't know that I realized that as somebody who hadn't been at that stage before. So I would just, encourage others who aren't necessarily thinking about, kids being out on the road at 6:15, 6:30 in the morning when you're heading off to work to be extra cautious. And yeah, would definitely appreciate any additional focus on the traffic side as people are making that transition and and remembering that we've got more kids navigating the community here in the next couple weeks. Can you talk, I know Cops and Clergy is back next week after a little pause. Can you just talk about when that is, what they're talking about, and who is invited to attend so that folks are aware of that? Because I think that's an important one, especially right now.
Sure. I don't remember the date right now, right offhand.
It's Tuesday.
September 2nd. So we're going to talk about safety as far as active shooter stuff goes. So anybody in the community is welcome to come and attend. It's obviously geared towards clergy within the city or even outside the city. If anybody from the surrounding cities want to come, we'd be happy to have anybody there.
Awesome.
Very important topic right now.
Very important topic, again, as we send kids back to school. I'm curious, so the data around calls being up, but no increase in reports. I guess I'm just curious your thoughts around why that might be, that we've seen that increase in calls, but the report numbers haven't trended that same direction.
Sure. Some of the call load going up is due to some of the traffic stops.
Okay.
And others might be just a situation where we're going out and contacting people. Maybe somebody sees something suspicious, or it could be an officer seeing somebody on the side of the road that they want to stop and talk to, and it wouldn't be maybe a community-oriented policing contact, but a different kind of contact. So there would be anything that just doesn't constitute a report.
Okay. But I guess, so we don't have an idea of kind of, maybe it is to your point, like people are calling more often when they are concerned about something. I know that's something we've talked about in the past, is people aren't always sure when to call, and sometimes they are more hesitant than they should be to call. So it would probably be a good trend if people were calling because they were concerned, and maybe at the end of the day, it wasn't something that needed a report. But you were able to check it out and ensure that things were okay. But I guess I would be curious, like, especially if that's a trend that continues, I'd be curious, if the calls continue to go up, but the reports don't, like.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting
about.
to see how the rest of the year pans out.
Yeah.
And it could be a conglomerate of things, it could be the transit center with
Okay.
a lot of suspicious stuff going on there, just people calling in and just around the city.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I guess I'd be curious to know an update, I think, if in the future around, because I think we are 2 days away from the 1-year anniversary of the light rail opening, which is very exciting, but I think it would be interesting to hear about, I don't think we've talked specifically about kind of the police department's, experience with that and how that's kind of impacting the work that you do. I think that would be interesting, at least for me. I think other stuff that I'm interested in is just, I think, trends in data. And I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I appreciate kind of at least like the quarter, like the look back for last year and like where we were and where we are. I would love to see like a little bit more data, because it's hard. It was last year a blip and we were just, low or high. Like, I would love to see like 5 or 6 years of data, because I think the trends for me are really where a lot of where I can help better understand what's going on, right? And so I would love to see a little bit more kind of timeline around where things are at, so we can understand, are they trending up? Are they trending down? Is this, kind of just a blip in the, so I guess that would be an ask if that is possible at some point in future reports. I'd also be interested, I appreciated the mention of spider tech. I think that would be another area that I'd be really curious to just hear some feedback on around, like, what is the feedback that we're getting from folks in those text messages? I know it's, I think, been a positive tool in terms of people appreciate that we are doing that engagement, but would love to understand better, like, what is the feedback that we're getting and what does that look like? I think that's it. So I appreciate the report and appreciate the work, and thanks for being here tonight.
I just want to make a comment on that, because in school we used to do crime reports and stuff. And so there's a lot of variables that go into information like that. And you had brought it up earlier. And so a lot of times when we're looking at trends and different things, we have to think about how many officers were on duty at the time. Were we short-staffed at the time? Because the more officers you have, the more your statistical analysis increases, because you probably have more arrests, you have more things going on, and then you got the big variable about the light rail. So to me, what would be interesting is looking at the light rails in the future of the trends going forward, having transit come in and giving a report out, because I was talking to somebody last night who had to call security on light rail. So I'd be really curious. And then I had somebody else tell me there was no security on light rail. And so that's the kind of trends I would like to see on how in the future we're going forward and working with transit on that, because a lot of times we can go back and look at different things from analysis, but we don't know the whole variables at the time. And so to me, I want, if we're, giving direction, we have to look at how much time it takes and how much data we want, because I hear you giving a request, but sometimes we give requests and sometimes they're heard and sometimes they're not heard. And so it's always nice if maybe we put a parameter about what you're asking for so we can get that data back. Because I've made requests in the past and sometimes maybe I don't get the data back. And so, or you do. So that's why I was wondering if you wanted to put more parameters around it, or you're just saying in general, this is kind of what you want.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification request, Councilmember Sonmore. I guess for me, more data is helpful. I'm not necessarily asking us to run additional reports. I appreciate at this point, at least the categories that we have, but I think we're seeing those categories every time you come in. So I don't think it would probably be a huge ask to just keep more of them on the slides as we move forward versus just seeing the previous year. So I guess that is my ask. Ideally, I'd love to see 5 to 6 years because I think that tells a better story, to Councilmember Sonmore's point about sometimes like there are momentary changes and things that impact, and sometimes there are big changes that impact things longer, but more is helpful for me at least, but I don't want it to be a huge lift.
The way I'm picturing that is similar to budget projections, where we have the current year and then the previous years laid out like that.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
so like you're asking, because we've done it before, so like the next quarter report out, you may want to see how it was reported out a little bit differently. Or you just to get general information separately from report out.
I think I'm trying to understand, so like when we see a number like domestic violence is down this year, that sounds really positive, but I don't know if domestic violence spiked 100% last year, maybe it's just returning to our more historical norms, right? And I don't have that context just from this presentation. And so really I'm just trying to have a longer running kind of background so that I have some more contextual information so I know to ask, like, because that would be different, right? It's like, okay, it's down, that's great. Like, but again, like, is that just a blip? Is that a trend? Like, is it because we've made changes that are trending in a positive direction? So that's, I guess I'm just looking for more years of data. Like we have, right now we have last year's data and this year's data in a bunch of different areas of crimes committed. I just would like a couple more years worth behind
And
that.
I'm glad we're discussing it, because like if we were to take domestic violence, maybe on the next report, we could look at whatever years you want, but maybe if there's like subtext underneath, because like one person who just moved in the city spiked it, and so maybe, I guess what I'm saying, if we get that data, maybe there's some subtext on explaining why, because what happens is other people are gonna maybe see this data and they'll just assume that they understand it or what's going on, and it's nice maybe just to have some content behind the data they see, so they understand with domestic violence, full moons, or something, more crime is committed. But, it's, I guess, is that kind of, so you want to see it like a trend? I'm just trying to, I'm working on some charts right now, and I'm trying to explain information, and when we get information, sometimes we just assume what it means, and I'm just saying if somebody in our residents sees something, they might not understand it. So there's kind of a two-tone content sometimes on what we're seeing. So we're just kind of asking for, maybe on the chart, just like a little explanation of
We can do that.
I mean, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm sure you've done them before, but I just wanted to make sure. Sometimes when we give direction, it just goes out there and then we never see it come back. So that's why I was trying to, orchestrate so I understood what you were asking for.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you want a few additional years on there just to compare all those numbers with, which isn't a huge ask. I have all those numbers. I save them.
Okay, thank you.
And when think we see it nationally in the news, there was an article just today where somebody was saying, well, crime is up. And then somebody was saying, well, no, it's down. You have to know what you're judging. If you look at it in terms of months, maybe it is up, maybe it is down. But a more realistic trend study would have to involve more time. So if you look back 1 or 2 years, it really gives you more accurate terms in terms of trends, because there's reasons that crime is down. During the pandemic, obviously people were staying home, so crime was down.
Right.
But that's not a fair comparison. That's an outlier. So I think what you're asking for is an environment to judge things a little bit more accurately in terms of what's going on and what's not going on.
Exactly.
Because you can come in here and say crime is up or down in 3 months. That means nothing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
Easy to do.
Yep.
Pardon me. Any other questions? Okay. Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, sir. I think these are more comments than questions. I always want to start off with thank you for your leadership. I think it's been a rough year for you all. Just keep it simple. You've been in the news and getting beat up, and we keep saying it's not you all, it's your profession, but I know it's got to land on you personally. So appreciate your leadership through what I would argue are interesting times. That said, I also want to acknowledge in proof and action, which is before we started this meeting, I told the both of you there was a gentleman outside I was a little concerned with, and I just want to acknowledge as a black man telling that to 2 police officers, knowing that there's a man of color out there, I didn't have a hesitation because I know the skill sets that you all bring to the table, the care you bring, but I also want to acknowledge that that was an example of trust. Right. And again, I just think that's the only way you can demonstrate is through your actions. I can keep saying it into the word, I appreciate you, but let's show through my actions. So I appreciated your response to also doing a welfare check on this gentleman if he's still out there. That said, I wanted to go back to something that Councilmember Page was saying, and I have to admit I got lost in all the numbers, so I'm just looking at the sheets now. And so I'm looking at, in particular, the first quarter arrests by race and second quarter arrests by race, just that slide deck, if you will, or part of the slide deck. And I want to ask this one cautiously because I'm not asking for data, the way this conversation was going, but maybe just something to think about that might get at this, which is, caveat, everybody who's ever been arrested was innocent. Okay, that stated, process is usually one of the ways that people try to come back at this. And they say, I was mistreated, I was profiled, or any of that. I imagine when you are, quote unquote, one of these folks on this slide, you still have your rights to say I was mistreated and there's a process for that. Do we track that at the local level? And maybe that's a way in which to demonstrate, because again, I know the question about looking at numbers and our demographics, but not everybody on the graphic is from Mountlake Terrace. Conceptually makes sense, but it doesn't hide or doesn't account for bias, if you will. But it seems like maybe where it would is, well, we do seem to have X number of people, and I could racialize it if we want to off of these categories, because that's what we'll end up doing, but nonetheless seeing if there's something there. That's just another layer of proof, if you will, or evidence that we are at least doing our part correct. How a system works in the kind of global sense of it all is neither here nor there. I think it's your private interactions that matter the most in moments like this. So just wondering if maybe that's a way to also demonstrate how our specific department is doing.
We have to track that to remain accredited through WASPIC. So that's a big part of it. Bias-based policing is a major factor in accreditation. It has several, I think there's like 6 proofs involved with that standard alone. So they're very, very attuned to that. So is the Training Commission. So the answer is yes, we do track that. And usually in our year-end report, one of the statistics we give you is complaints and break it down. How many were about bias? Racial bias, I mean, bias is a big word, but we're talking about particularly racial or cultural bias. We simply aren't getting a lot of those complaints, nor have we historically. So yeah, we'll present those numbers to you as we continue to.
Thank you, and thank you for confirming, because I felt like I used to see that, which kind of lends me back to this initial question I should have started with, mostly because I feel like we're heading towards a pattern. We used to get just the first quarter report, and then we would get the second quarter report. And it seems like the last 2 times they've been combined, and I kind of like this one, I'm not going to, because to your point about I can at least see what happened beforehand, but I wasn't sure if this is a trend or if this was just happened to work out this way
We're
again.
just trying to catch up this time.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, for what it's worth, feedback-wise, in going down this line of having some context, I personally kind of like having the two quarters side by side, even though obviously that meant we had to wait on one of the quarters. So I don't know if that makes sense, but in the spirit of like, this didn't seem awkward to me, and I wasn't sure if that was the trend that we're going to go with, but it sounds like it isn't. So just feedback that this worked, and maybe that's the way to do it. Always bring the previous quarter forward as we're doing the new quarter.
We can do that.
So don't know how
Yeah, I'd be
others-
happy to
how
do that for the
others-
third quarter report, is throw the previous quarter on there.
Perfect. And then the last one is just curiosity. What on earth is Officer, I'm not sure her name, holding? I was just trying to figure that out. On the next slide down, records and animal control. Is that a mole? What the heck is that? No, me too, won't. So I refuse to go home without knowing what this is. What on earth is that?
I think it's a rat.
Oh, scary.
We
Okay.
had some interesting visitors. Yeah,
Wait, what was yours?
it's a rat.
That is a rat.
We
Goodness
had some
gracious.
interesting visitors at the City Hall, at the Police Department. When you started doing construction here, the rats relocated from some of this wreckage down the way to our attic, so she's probably removing one.
Goodness gracious. All right. All right. Hazard pay, I hope. All right. Thank you again for the report. Very serious conversation that we can giggle a little bit here. It's just a reminder that I do believe, we have one of the stronger departments for sure in the county, if not in the state. But the fact that this council continues to ask you to refine the report and you respond, I think is a wonderful example. Of course, we have the elephant in the room, the flock camera conversations coming, so this will start to really change some of the requests that we have. But I appreciate that you're already forward thinking about how that can look, and just, thank you for your work.
I had a couple questions, or I guess they're questions. I believe in the past, like at your annual report, I swear I've seen a bar graph of certain incidents for like 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and a bar graph that just showed like murders and infractions and that. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, to get more data from specific areas like burglaries, and have a bar graph of the burglaries for the last 5 years, something like that. And then maybe underneath you could say what the population was and how that shows population growth, or I don't know. But anyway, I think I saw something like that.
We've done that.
Bar graph.
Well, as in any survey, the larger the audience, the more accurate data you get. So I think that's an easy way to get a bigger picture. We're just expanding our audience and bringing more data to establish graphs. I think that's a great idea. We can do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this report. It's very important for citizens to show the police department has transparency, and we have benefits of transparency. We have increased accountability, public awareness, and community engagement. So thanks for preparing these reports, and that's the benefits of transparency. So thanks again. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for being here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving right along. We have a discussion on council liaison reports with our city manager, Jeff Knighton.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan and council. So a couple months ago, I can't remember, one of those, there was a item brought up right before council liaison reports that we hold on the agenda for your every regular meeting. It's not typically an item on work session nights like tonight, but there was the desire to have that discussed because I think there's a little bit differing understanding among council members about what should be in the liaison reports. So I did look at a couple other cities, and I looked at cities that had the same form of government we do. I did not look at strong mayor forms of government cities. But really, each city does it their own way, and there's no one right way to do it. It's purely what council desires to come out of the council reports. I gave a couple of examples in the staff report there, one from Bothell and one from Shoreline. They both do it a little bit differently from each other. But then I did take section 8.07 of your adopted protocol manual and highlighted the language that's there. And I also understand, although anecdotally, that council reports were done in a different manner previously, previous councils. So really what the question comes down to is, what does council desire to get out of the council liaison reports? And, what's the objective? What are you trying to accomplish? And I think that way, if we all have a common understanding of what the purpose of that agenda item is, then we can move forward and everybody's on the same page. So I just turn it over to council for discussion, and happy to answer any questions if I can.
Councilmember Sonmore?
I'll do it. It's almost like every time we get a new council person in, we just should level set. And so my expectation, and I'll just tell you, is with the council report, I would like to see everybody, if they have a board or if they don't, it's fine. You say your layers, okay, I'm with Park and Rec. This has happened at that last meeting, and this is what you should know. And then here's my other board. This is what happened. And to me, that's my main thing, is that if you go to a board, I'd like to know what's happening because it improves our communication with one another. And so it's helpful to know what we did with the board. And then I'd rather not have us say, well, I went to a council meeting and I went to a work session, because in the minutes, it looks like some of us didn't go, and we're always mostly there anyhow. And then I would say, so I just would like it a little bit more structure. Okay, liaison reports, board reports, and then other, impacts of the city and Snohomish or Snohomish County. I don't care. It's just information sharing. I'd like to see it more organized, and it's okay to say I don't have anything to report. Because in the past, sometimes people would, well, why aren't you doing more? And I don't want it to be something where you beat each other up at, and we used to sometimes call it the bragging session. And I don't want to deflate that, but if you're going to give me a report, tell me a little more about maybe the event, so I learned something. Because sometimes we just say, I went here and here and here, and it's like, well, what happened? What did you do? And so I rather would have it be, if you're in a hurry, I get it, but, which happens a lot, but it would be nice to say, okay, Laura went to Park and Rec, and I'm not putting more on Jennifer on what you have to put in the minute. And I don't have a big issue if we're running late and you want to send that to Jennifer. I had just heard in the past that as a city clerk, you can only do minutes on what you heard. But if we want to have special exceptions for that, I don't have a big issue. It's more of having improving our communication with one another on, okay, you heard something about the school, and you do very good at your reports, and you'll say what happened at the school, and then you'll give a couple bullets. And I like that, because then I'm understanding what's going on in the community a little bit more. So I'm not trying to beat people up. I just kind of wanted to see it more organized and maybe adding a little, and I shouldn't say this, but adding a little bit more to your report. And so that was my big concern about the reports, because if you want to give more, I know a lot of people do a lot in the community, and I'm actually interested in what you're doing in the community. And if you want to talk about it here, so be it. So that was my 2 cents on that.
I'd like to say that sounds good to me. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. I will start with, I don't have super strong feelings on this particular topic. I'm generally of the perception and opinion that, council members should share what they feel like is what they would like to share. We're all elected to be here from our community, and I think we all get to choose how we show up and represent. I will say, I think one of the things that might be helpful is I appreciated that some cities have their reports earlier in the meeting. I think one of the challenges, candidly, with our reports is that it's one of the last things on our agenda. And when it gets late, it just makes it really challenging. So we're rushing through, and it's like, what do you choose from and what don't you choose from and what do you eliminate? And sometimes there's lots of good things. Like, I would have loved to share, I talked to so many great, community partners at National Night Out, but I think I had like 5 minutes and, before we were running out of time at the meeting we reported on that on. So I didn't speak to those things. And so that would be, I don't know, for me, maybe a potential way to better accommodate those things to ensure that we have the opportunity to speak to the things that we each feel like make sense to as a council member. And we don't have to do so in quite such a rushed manner. So I'd throw that out for discussion.
Councilmember Sonmar?
I would just go back to saying, if we're just doing the basics, then if you have a board at least once a month, you should at least say that you went there and, maybe a few things. Like Left One, we can't really report out on that. So that's why Rick and I say we just attended Left One. And then, Park and Rec, I just try and say what's on the agenda or the major things. But I think at a minimum, that would be something that we should do. And I'm not trying to get them to go longer. And I understand the reason at the end, because we've got to do our city business up front, and we don't want to keep our staff later than at all possible. So I don't have any issue with it, putting it at the end. But if you have more to share, and it's running late, and if you don't feel like you have the opportunity to share what you're talking about, maybe we need to find or put that on an agenda item so you do get to report out on community sharing or whatever you just said. So,
Councilmember Page?
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of agree with both Councilmember Sonmore as well as Mary, being new to this game here of knowing what to report on. I kind of see it as, a multitude of things that I should be doing. And first and foremost, what am I doing for the city of Mountlake Terrace to demonstrate that, I'm involved with what's going on with the council? How am I involved with what's going on within the city that's going to be helpful to the city, and what's going on outside the city that I think the city, will benefit from. And so in my mind, it really should be, what I think is important, in those three aspects as to how I report. I agree that when I report on things, I'm cutting my teeth, to try to make sure that whatever it is that I'm reporting on, I can add something to the report to show that it has some type of impact either on me or the city or both of us. And I think that's, for me, that's what works. And I hope that, that is enough. I'm not going to, say who should say more or who should say less. I think that it depends upon each one of us as council members. We need to say what we think is important, and how much of it we say should be what we think is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the conversation. If I stay high level, I would say what I picked up on is we stay the course. We add more details to bullet points, and I think that's all I needed. So, because to me, what's important, it should be important to whom, And I feel like the last time we had this conversation, we opened it up beyond what's on the green sheet. Firstly, I'm very happy to see the blue on here. That's never been on here before. We talk about it. Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, sorry, I'm like, what city am I in? Mayor Pro Tem often talks to those, so it's good to see that it's on here and how many different ways he is engaged. I appreciate that. That said, I would argue there's a bunch of stuff on here that we could put on here that we might want to learn about, maybe not, I don't know. So in that regard, I just say, well, what I think I picked up on is it's up to each individual council member to decide what's important, give a little bit more detail, and we go from there, which, you know, that's fine by me. Because the good news for me is I keep doing this whether I report it or not. And so in that regard, I think this makes perfect sense. I know personally I've been trying to go off of that previous conversation that opened it up to where we are here. But, you know, that said, thank you for the conversation.
Councilmember Sonmore. Any other questions? All right. Next item, review September 4th, 2025 regular meeting agenda. I hope everybody got to take a look at that. It's the end of your, on our tablets. I'd like to thank, I don't know everyone I should thank, but at least our city clerk for helping with the agenda on the website and reimagining it and making it easier to get in and out of. But anyway, did anybody have any questions on the agenda coming up? Thumbs up for consensus on everything okay? Good, all right. So that's fine. Council comments. Anybody have a special comment?
This is just a really quick one. Jennifer, maybe I haven't used it a lot, the new agenda, but when I went out there for today's date, August 28th, I kept on looking underneath for the next meeting. And then when I click on it here, I was like, oh, it's at the end. Is maybe at one point, maybe you could just show us or talk about any of the changes that we may need to know about. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Woodard.
Can I add on to that? I don't know that we have control over the website, but I will confess I hadn't seen the new format, and when I jumped on the page, as I am right now, under agendas and minutes, you might think that that green icon, agendas and minutes, would have been the clue, especially the line above it says new agendas and minutes, public is live, click on the icon below. Did not see that for about 3 minutes. And I just kept going back and forth, looking for it. So I don't know if you can change it to colors or something, but it's just one of those where I'm like, it's totally intuitive after you see it and you're embarrassed to embarrass myself right now. But truth told.
It's just different.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, maybe different colors or something. So it is very nice, though. I will admit, it's very nice.
We'll make it a 2005 website with the flashing, I'd also like to note that this system, it works well, but it's also much more cost-effective than the previous system. So not only did we get a new system that works well, it's also cheaper. So that's a win-win for me, anyway.
Any other comments? Not seeing any. Last item, adjournment. Have a good evening.